All right, y'all, so this is going to be the week 1 lecture review that I was mentioning in Canvas earlier today from the announcement that I sent out. We're going to go over everything from today, work some problems together, and kind of hopefully clear up some confusion that people were having. So y'all know from your test today, or quiz really, not test, how important knowing your abbreviations and conversions are. So let's look at some heavy hitters that you would need on your abbreviation sheet. So capsule, tablet, and suspension are going to be your main 3, and your suspension you're really going to see when we get to pediatric dosing. As far as routes of administration, IM, IV piggyback, PO, and subcutaneous is going to be your most important ones. Times is really going to be AC, BID, TID, QID, PRN, Q blank hours. In this case, Q2H is every 2 hours, but you could see Q6H, which would be every 6 hours. Stat, and then HS. As far as your other abbreviations, they're all really important to know. Some major ones that I saw people had issues with on the quiz: GTT drop, MEQ, which is milliequivalents, GR, which is grain. And for your conversions, your heavy hitters here are going to be your 1 inch is 2.5 centimeters, 12 inches 1 foot, 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. 1 pound is 16 ounces, 60 milligrams is 1 grain, 1,000 milliliters in a liter, 15 drops in a milliliter, 1 teaspoon is 5 milliliters, 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons, and then 1 tablespoon is 15 milliliters. 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. 500 milliliters in a pint, 240 milliliters in a cup. 1 cc is 1 milliliter. A cc and a milliliter are exactly the same. And then, of course, your temperature conversions. So kind of looking at rounding rules, one thing that I noticed a lot were people asking me temperature, when do you round? Your temperatures are always going to be rounded to the tenths place, regardless of if it's Fahrenheit or Celsius. Number 2 and number 3, we're not really going to look at until next week, so those don't apply here. Weight is the other big one. I know it says weight in kilograms here, but this is also going to apply to weight in pounds. So you're always going to want to round your weight, regardless of what it is, to the tenth spot. And then IV fluid administration, we're not really going to go over until for this test. So leading zeros is something that we didn't hit on in class, but we definitely need to discuss a little bit. So a leading zero is a zero that's placed in front of the decimal to draw attention to it. So for the example here, 0.75 instead of 75. And that's so important because if you miss a decimal point in a dosage calculation, it could be a critical or fatal error in the care of your patient. So a good example that I can think of is if I'm in the ER and I'm giving a medication called Ativan. And normally the dosing is 0.5 milligrams. So see how that zero is here in front of the decimal, and it brings attention to it. Now, I would give Ativan for a patient that's combative, trying to hurt himself or hurt staff members. So what if I'm looking at the computer to quickly see how much I need to give? And I just see 0.5 milligrams. Well, I'm looking quickly, so I could miss that decimal, and instead, I could see 5 milligrams. Which is very different from 0.5. And Ativan is a strong sedative that could cause respiratory failure in my patient. 0.5 is a pretty standard dose that we give for patients, but 5 milligrams could be a pretty high dose depending on the patient's tolerance. So that's where it could be a critical or fatal error if I give them 5 milligrams instead of 0.5 milligrams. As well as general rounding here, remember that if the number you're basing your rounding off of is 4 or less, you're going to keep the same number, and it's 5 or more, you're going to increase it by 1. And also going back to the leading zeros, you need to always make sure that you have a leading zero. So make sure that from this point on that you're writing answers. Say you get an answer that's 0.89. Make sure that you're writing it as 0.89. And that's just, again, to get you in the habit of putting that leading zero. Now, if you get a number that's like 15.89, you don't need a leading zero because you already have your 15 there. So numbers like that, this doesn't apply. This is just where you kind of just got a decimal that's hanging out and nothing's in front of it.